In this exercise, I'm going to explore what happens when you modify a data flow by inserting a new transformation in an existing data flow. This is disruptive to the data flow, but fortunately the designer can help you recover. So I'm going to continue working with this transforms package that I created earlier. And here I am in the data flow tab. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the toolbox here. And I want to use a multicast transformation. So I'll come up here to my transformations, and it's right there. And I'm going to drag this onto the design surface. I'll move it over a little bit. Whoops. The designer doesn't always make it easy to select components. Okay. So what this transformation does is it creates copies of a data flow that you can send to multiple transformations or destinations. And here I'm just going to use it to show what happens when you insert a new transformation that causes the column list in the data flow to change. So the next thing I'm going to do is delete the pipeline between the sort transformation and the audit. So I'm going to select it and press delete. Notice that I get this red X here, and if I hover over it, it says there are some mapping errors on this path. Well, yeah, there sure are, because audit is expecting some input, but it's not getting it. So I'm going to delete that one as well. And notice that I have now a problem on the destination, and there's still some mapping errors. Okay, same reason. So I've basically disrupted the pipeline flow and need to recover from that. All right, now one problem that sometimes occurs is that messages that appear within the designer when you hover over things just aren't fully visible, but you can always come down here to this errorless window in order to see all of the available messages in great detail. So in this case, I have two errors: validation error. The Excel destination, both cases, has 14 input columns that are not mapped to upstream columns. Delete the unmapped input columns or map columns to them with the resolve references editor. For example, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that pretty much indicates what the problem is, but it doesn't really have enough information to really help with what's going on. So at this point, I know I have a disruptive flow. I'm going to start now making the changes that I want to make. So I'll come over here, select sort. Rather than going into audit, I now want it to go into multicast. And then I'll select the multicast and bring this into the Excel destination so that I'm now bypassing audit entirely. And notice that I still have this error icon here. The problem is that the Excel destination, even though the overall data that I'm reading here through this part of the pipeline is fine, it's expecting those 4 additional columns that I added here within the audit transformation. So it's showing that there's a problem on this path. So I'm going to double click on this arrow there. And notice that it opens up this nice Resolve References dialog box. Brand new in Integration Services in 2012. It's a wonderful improvement upon the tools that we had in earlier versions of Integration Services. So in this case, I have unmapped input columns. So the output columns are just fine because that transformation that I just clicked on, the one coming out of the multicast now, doesn't have any unmapped output columns, so that's not a problem. But I have unmapped input columns because the destination is expecting these 4 fields, but it's not getting them. So at this point, you have a few options. You can leave the invalid references if you're going to be adding them back later. Maybe you're going to add another transformation. Maybe you're going to move that audit transformation higher up in the pipeline or do something else like that. Or you can delete them, or you can replace them with other columns. In this case, I'm just going to delete the invalid columns because I don't need them anymore. Fortunately, this dialog box makes that just about as easy as it possibly can be. Notice this nice little option here, delete unmapped input columns. I'll select that. And then I can also preview the changes. And it just shows that I'm going to be deleting these items, these column names, from the Excel destination. Okay, that's exactly what I want it to do. All right, so I will click on OK, and now the data flow is back and happy again. Errors have gone away. Now the Excel destination is going to be a little bit different because it's not going to output those 4 additional columns, but otherwise it's going to output all of the data that I read from the flat files.